Today we will start Raymond and Graham Rule the School by Mike Knudsen and Steve Wilkinson, illustrated by Stacy Curtis. To our East Mill Creek Elementary classmates, and to the memory of mean old Mrs. Gibson, the best teacher we ever had, MK and SW. For Levi, SC. All right, the prologue. It was late, the end of summer vacation. Every kid in the world was dreading the unavoidable return to school. And if it were any other year, Graham and I would be miserable too. But not this year. No, sirree. This would be different. It would be a year to remember, a year like no other. A year we could look back on 80 years from now when we were old and wrinkly and say to ourselves, that was the best year ever. Yes, it was finally here, 4th grade. That's right, 4th grade. We were no longer little kids. We would be the oldest, coolest, toughest kids at East Mill Creek Elementary. Oh yes, this would be the year we would rule the school. So I guess at their elementary, 4th grade was the oldest grade instead of 5th. All right, 4th grade men, chapter 1. 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was already hot. I was shooting hoops with Graham on his driveway, discussing our soon-to-be 4th grade kingdom. We've been best friends forever, since we were little kids. Graham is still pretty short. The coolest thing about Graham is that he has red hair and about 1,000,000 freckles. We tried to count them once, but we got tired after just counting the freckles on one of his hands. We were excited for school to start, and it was only 2 days away. The first day was on a Wednesday this year. So not only did we get to start 4th grade, but we also got to have a short week of school. I stopped dribbling and tried to spin the ball on my finger. Hey, Graham, remember Gordon Armstrong? I asked. The ball wobbled on my finger for a moment and then fell off. Of course I remember Gordon Armstrong, Graham said, smiling. We must have had the same conversation 100 times that summer, but somehow it seemed to get old. Gordon Armstrong was in 4th grade when we were in 1st grade, and without question, he ruled the school back then. Everything about Gordon was cool. The way he walked, the way he talked. Everything. And he was huge, almost twice as big as me or Graham. We knew he was the king the first moment we saw him. He was strutting down the hall with Michelle Johnson, the prettiest girl at East Mill Creek Elementary. As they passed by, we immediately jumped aside like we were microwave popcorn or something. Gordon looked down at us and with half a smile simply said, "Hi, boys." I know it doesn't sound like much, but we understood him loud and clear. He really meant, hey, look at me. I'm a 4th grade man holding hands with a good-looking 4th grade lady, and you two are just a couple of puny little boys. And he was right. We hated the fact that he could be so right. Gordon was a man. He had real muscles and everything, and us, well, we were just puny little kids with absolutely no muscles at all. Yes, ever since that day, Graham and I had waited and waited for our day to come. The day we would become 4th grade men. The day we would become Gordon Armstrong. We were ready to give a simple "hi, boys" to some poor, tiny 1st grade boys and have them look up at us in awe. Yeah, Gordon was cool, Graham said, but doesn't it seem like he was a lot taller than we are now? I still feel kind of small. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Plus, Michelle Johnson looked a lot different from the girls our age. She seemed more, womanly or something, I said, passing him the ball. Oh, well, we're still going to rule the school, Graham said. Everything seemed perfect. The only thing that could possibly go wrong would be to get stuck in Mrs. Gibson's class. I got the shivers just thinking her name. Mrs. Gibson is about 100 years old. To simply say she's scary would be too kind. She's much worse than scary. She's almost like some kind of tall, wrinkly, old, creepy, monsterish being from a horror movie. Even back in first grade, I had heard stories about old Mrs. Gibson, but I didn't experience her evil firsthand until I reached second grade. I remember it like it was yesterday. There I was, standing in the lunch line, minding my own business, when something cold and bony touched the back of my neck. Whatever it was somehow drained the blood from my neck and sent it down my spine like ice water. At the same time, I heard an old, raspy voice say, "Excuse me." My stomach leaped to my throat as I slowly turned to see what was on my neck. I looked up into old Mrs. Gibson's squinty eyes staring down at me through these huge glasses. Without thinking, I screamed like I'd never screamed before and ran down the hall waving my hands in all directions like a maniac. I didn't turn back until it was safely outside on the playground. I didn't dare return to the lunchroom for fear she would still be there, so I sat outside, hungry as could be, waiting for everyone else to finish lunch and come out to play. Some kids came out and made fun of me, but I didn't care. At least I was still alive. As long as I didn't get stuck in her class, life would be good. But it didn't worry me too much because ever since kindergarten, I've always had the best teachers. It's like I've had some kind of good teacher luck throughout my whole elementary school life. I worried about Graham, though. He always seemed to get the bad ones. Like in second grade, I had Mrs. Bigler. We played kickball for PE and fun stuff like that. Graham, on the other hand, had Mrs. Jones. For PE, their class would do weird things like learn pioneer dances. Mrs. Jones looked old too. I'll bet she was at least 90. Who knows, maybe she was even a pioneer once. I mean, why else would you do pioneer dancing for PE? It's not a sport, a game, or even fun. Plus, pioneers aren't around anymore, so why would you ever learn to dance like them? Anyway, we only had one more day before we found out who our teachers would be. Tomorrow morning, the class assignments would be posted on the school doors. I stole the basketball from Graham and threw up one last shot. Air ball, he laughed as my shot missed the rim by about a mile. All right, we have about 6 minutes. I think we can read chapter 2. All right, if not, we'll have to stop partway through. Chapter 2, Mrs. Gibson. The next day, I got up early and walked down to school with Graham. Every year, the new class lists were taped on the front doors the day before school started. Usually, we just waited for the first day of school to find out who our teachers were. But this year, we had to know the very moment the lists were posted. On our way, we talked again about Gordon Armstrong. We wondered what he must look like now, as a 7th grader. We especially wondered what Michelle Johnson looked like. After a lot of wondering, we finally arrived at the school grounds. There was already a bunch of kids looking at the lists. Graham and I stopped and looked at each other. Then, at the same time, we took a deep breath and slowly walked up to the school steps to the lists on the front doors. I said a little prayer in my head that I wouldn't be listed in that creepy old woman's class. I scanned the class list and immediately found Mrs. Gibson's name. Please don't be in her class. Please don't be in her class, I chanted in my mind as I read down the list. Unfortunately, it took me less than 1 second to zero It took me less than 1 second to zero in on my name, sorry. I closed my eyes and shook my head. It can't be, I said. Maybe I didn't really see what I thought I saw. Slowly, I opened my eyes again. My heart was pounding, and I started breathing faster and faster. No, oh no! There it was, as big as life. Raymond Knudsen, right in the middle of Mrs. Gibson's class list. It seemed to be twice the size of the other names. Suddenly, I felt all shaky and queasy, like I was about to puke. I buried my hands in my head. This can't be happening, I thought. This year I was supposed to rule the school. The year I had waited for since the first grade. I was supposed to be Gordon Armstrong. Maybe my mom would send a note to the school saying I'm allergic to old, tall, skinny, evil woman with squinty eyes, or something like that. As I was concocting lies in my head to get out of Mrs. Gibson's class, Graham spoke up and broke my concentration. It won't be so bad, he said. Look, I'm in there too. We can't be miserable together. It'll be fun. I looked over at Graham like he was out of his mind. I couldn't believe what he just said. Oh, so it won't be that bad? I said with a fake smile. You think it'll be fun, do you? Then without even blinking, I blurted out, That's easy for you to say. My voice came out louder and louder with every word. You always get bad teachers, no offense, but you must be used to it. I always have good teachers. And now, when it counts, when it really, really counts, my 4th grade year, I get stuck with the oldest, creepiest teacher on earth. I was so mad I didn't know what to do. As I turned around to walk down the stairs, I bumped into a tall, thin pole. Great, I screamed. Not only do I get the worst teacher on earth, but then I bump into... I couldn't even finish my sentence. That pole I bumped into wasn't a pole at all. It was a person. I slowly looked up in horror as I saw Mrs. Gibson staring down at me. I felt that same urge to run away, screaming like a madman, but somehow I couldn't move. It was just like those squinty little eyes had some kind of supernatural freezing power over me. Mrs. Gibson didn't move either. She must have been thinking of how she was going to kill me. Would it be a slow death, torturing me little by little, each day throughout the school year, or would she just get it over with right now in front of all these kids? Finally, she made her move. Excuse me, young man, are you all right? She said. I tried to nod my head, but I was so scared I couldn't move it up or down. In fact, I couldn't move anything. My arms, my legs, nothing. Then I swear she made what almost looked like a smile with her wrinkly mouth and walked into the school. All right, we'll stop there for today so we can start math. We have about 45 seconds before we start, so go ahead and stretch.